Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on which part of this beautiful country that you're in. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. You're watching Rebel Roundup, and I'm joined by my Saskatchewan-based co-host, Lise Merle. Lise, how's it going?
Well, after last night's performance in Congress, it is a wonderful Wednesday, isn't it? Yesterday, I was watching the replay and I was like, "Oh my god, me and she was so salty yesterday. The both of us were just we were in a little bit of a snit yesterday considering all of the news in the world. But oh, does it feel good? Does it feel good to be alive today? That was a magnificent night last night and I can't wait to get into it. Hello, Rebel fam. Hello, it's good to be here.
Yeah, that was it was Trump derangement on full display from the Democrats. Like they tried to turn Trump's address to Congress into a circus, and Trump handled it masterfully. You know, like calling out Pocahontas
Oh,
to her
I
face.
thought of you. I thought of you in that moment. It was a spectacular takedown with their little loser signs that they're holding up because
Ugh,
that's all they got are these little loser slogans. Their little repurposed church fans. They don't go to church, so they have to use
right.
those fans for another reason. But it was a shocking display of the Democratic Party and where they're mentally at. These are miserable,
They're not good.
defeated people. No, they're not in a good space. They are definitely not in a good space. Like, if you know a Democrat in the States, check in on them. Like, wellness checks
Yes.
for all the Democrats in the States because they are not doing well. They are not
Well,
doing well, those people. But I mean, it's so delightful to see, though. Like, nobody deserves it. Look at them. And all of the women in pink after after they betray women. I mean, co-opting our color like that. Like, get out, all of you. Sickening. Just look at just dour and upset.
oh, just a surly, miserable looking bunch. But we'll get to that in a second. There's so much to talk about, and it was. I mean, you're right. They're not doing well. They're not okay. The Democrats. But this is. If you're a new viewer, this is our daily show. It's called Rebel Roundup. We talk about the news of the day or of last night. We do it completely unscripted. You'll get our hot takes, our spicy takes, sometimes our cold takes. Um, and we want to discuss it with you. So if you are watching us on Rumble, thank you for supporting a great free speech platform. If you want to support the work that we do, you can leave a Rumble rant. That's their paid chat over there. You know we'll never take a penny from any government, whether it's Justin Trudeau's, Mark Carney's, or Pierre Poilievre's. We won't take their money because how could we hold them to account on behalf of you if we ever did? So we rely on your support. If you want to support us, willingly, not what Justin Trudeau makes you do with the mainstream media. The paid chat, as I said, is called a Rumble rant. If it's over the $5 US minimum, we are obligating ourselves to read it on air. If we have time, we make our best efforts to read the chats that fall under the $5 US cutoff. And the same rules apply over on YouTube. Recently remonetized over there. Who knows how long that's going to last? But if you want to support our work over there, you can send us a super chat. $5 US cutoff, same rules. But also, there's an additional way you can support us over there. So they have a paid chat or a paid comment. It's called a super thanks. So if you're watching the recorded version of this, this is future Sheila thanking past viewers, and you can leave us it's called the super thanks over there, and we appreciate your support. Every little bit helps. We realize that Justin Trudeau is picking your pocket harder than ever before, so that you choose us means a great deal. All right, let's get into the wild news of the day. Let's start with tariff mania in here. This is day 2 of Trump's crushing tariffs on Canada because our politicians just refuse to do their jobs, or even going to work. Like the parliament is still prorogued. Day two of crushing tariffs, with a recession around the corner, according to economists, and yet nobody's going back to work. So this is from CTV News, but it's from the Canadian press. Canada's economic landscape is set to change dramatically. I don't know, from worse to even worse, because measures on both sides of the border will cause prices to increase, unemployment to rise, and consumers to pull back, said RSM economist Tu Nguyen. Manufacturing, energy, and food sectors will be immediately hit, but no sector will be spared, and businesses will need to cut jobs. And this is in response to Trump's 25% tariffs on most of the Canadian economy.
Well, yeah, obviously, but instead of doing something about it, is there? Oh, they're like, oh my, every single sector in Canada is going to be negatively impacted by this. Well, that maybe if you guys would have been working in our interest instead of gallivanting around the country in a leadership race, or instead of gallivanting around Europe, shoring up support for the Ukrainian meat grinder, maybe we would be in a better position right now. But no, because we are stuck with this loser liberal government that has no interest in working for us, only for themselves, and only keeping their own power in their evil, traitorous clutches. And this is the outcome that we were going to get when nobody is working on our behalf. Like, no, so not surprised. Are you surprised, Sheila?
No, not at all. Like, why are we doing reports on that the economy is going to contract? We know that. Everybody's been saying that. Wouldn't it be great if our politicians would have acted like it? All they had to do was do the things they needed to do to keep Canadians safe. This should never have even been about the Americans. They just should have done what they needed to do to keep Canadians safe, and the Americans would have said, "Look, they're doing a decent job up there. Maybe we would have got 10% tariffs across the board. Instead, it's 25."
No, and
Let's
and
go
the
ahead.
reason why we are in such a precarious position is because we spent the last 9 years chasing liberal pipe dreams, carbon taxes, green funds, net zero baloney. This is the reason why we are in such a terrible position is because the liberals and with the help of their NDP coalition have put us in this position where we are absolutely uncompetitive on the world stage. They could have spent 9 years supporting Canadian industry and supporting Canadian entrepreneurship and the peace and prosperity of our nation. The reason why we are in this terrible, terrible position today is because of their negligence over the last 9 years. Never forget that, Canada.
Yeah. I mean, it's bizarre to me that the Liberals will burn 1 million jobs just to warm their electoral chances, and people in the East are considering rewarding them for it. When you see the poll numbers jump up for Mark
It,
Carney, and you're like, what in God's name is wrong with you people?
it truly boggles the mind. It truly boggles the mind. But like all communists, one death is a tragedy, 1 million deaths is a statistic. So to the liberals, one job is a tragedy, and especially if it's a public sector union job, well then that's a tragedy. But 1 million jobs, especially out west, well then that's just a statistic. It is so easily avoidable for them to take accountability for what they've done when it's just a number in the air for them. We are just a number. We are slaves and feudal serfs to the people
Yeah.
of Ottawa, and nothing has shown it more than this. Nothing has shown it more than this.
We've got Trump calling out Canada and other allies for taking advantage of the US. He says he's going to push back with reciprocal tariffs starting April 2nd, and pledges to stop illegal fentanyl from killing young Americans. I pulled the fentanyl numbers here. Anyway, we'll talk about it after this clip.
Have growth in the auto industry like nobody's ever seen. Plants are opening up all over the place. Deals are being made. Never seen. That's a combination of the election win and tariffs. It's a beautiful word, isn't it? If you don't make your product in America, however, under the Trump administration, you will pay a tariff, and in some cases, a rather large one. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. This is happening by friend and foe, This system is not fair to the United States and never was. And so on April 2nd, I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to be accused of April Fool's Day. That's not just one day, which cost us a lot of money. But we're going to do it in April. I'm a very superstitious person. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them. If they do non-monetary tariffs to keep us out of their market, then we will do non-monetary barriers to keep them out of our market. There's a lot of that, too. They don't even allow us in their market. We will take in trillions and trillions of dollars and create jobs like we have never seen before. We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer. Much has been said over the last 3 months about Mexico and Canada, but we have very large deficits with both of them. But even more importantly, they've allowed fentanyl to come into our country at levels never seen before, killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens and many very young, beautiful people, destroying families. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. They are, in effect, receiving subsidies of hundreds of billions of dollars. We pay subsidies to Canada and to Mexico of hundreds of billions of dollars, and the United States will not be doing that any longer. We're not going to do it any longer.
Okay, well,
Well,
go ahead.
I do believe we're in the FAFO era of
Yeah.
tariff mania, where Donald Trump says an outrageous thing, and anybody that's read The Art of the Deal would know that this is what he does. So he'll come out and say this on the surface outrageous thing, and then wait for the reaction of the people he's negotiating with. And what
Yeah.
he's doing is playing poker and making Canadian premiers show their cards. Well, guess what happens when you show your cards in poker? You lose. And this is exactly where we are in this entire cycle. But I do appreciate what he said about us not upholding our end of the bargain. Even if you think about our NATO commitments,
Yeah.
our 2% GDP going towards NATO defense. American steelworkers in Pennsylvania have to work harder to make up for the shortfall that Canada isn't providing. Oil field workers in Texas have to work harder to make up for the shortfall that Canada isn't providing. I don't think that anything he said there was inherently ludicrous, to be completely honest.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to reiterate, I'm anti-tariff. Why? Because tariffs are just government taxes. And as you know, I'm anti-tax. I believe in free trade. I believe in the free markets. But how do you get people to do what they need to do? I think that's what Trump is trying to do here. I pulled the numbers because people say, oh, like fentanyl, it's not a big deal. That's what Mark Carney said, right? He said it in all places, Kelowna, where they're just hit by the drug epidemic. 82,000.
He said it's not a challenge. Sorry, go on, Sheila.
No, it's okay. Tell me what Mark Carney said. I forget the exact words.
He said it's a challenge, not a crisis.
Right.
He said it's a crisis next door in America, not a exactly that 50,000 challenges in Canada in the grave because of out of control fentanyl in Canada. But do go on. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I pulled the numbers because Trump does talk about this like it is one of the gravest things facing America. And he is absolutely right. 82,000 fentanyl deaths in 2022 alone, approaching 250,000 deaths, I think, since 2018. Like 250,000. just to 200 people per day dying in the United States due to fentanyl. To put it in context, 405,000 Americans died in World War II. In 2 years,
Holy hell.
unless they curb this, in 2 years they're going to hit those numbers by adding, 160,000 to the death count, which is already at 250,000. In 2 years, they're going to surpass the American deaths in World War II. Trump is treating this with the absolute urgency it must be treated with. And, if you are somebody whose job it is to protect American lives, wouldn't you do everything you could? That's Trump's approach. And I wish we had politicians who cared about us that way.
Alas, we do not. Alas,
Yeah.
we do not. But if you were a bad actor from a foreign country, say, I don't know, China, right? With a penchant for depopulation and societal destruction, what would be the thing that would get you there the fastest? It would look
Yeah.
a hell of a lot like the fentanyl crisis in Canada and the United States. So he's right to fight this tooth and nail and to destroy it from wherever it's coming from and then salt the earth around it. There are few things that have been more destructive. Well, especially with those numbers, Sheila, 250,000 people, that's not nothing. That's 250,000 families that are destroyed. If you think about the families that are impacted by that, that's creeping up on 2 million direct victims of this terrible scourge. And no matter what he has to do to get it done, we support President Trump for taking a really hard stance on this. And you're right, it is a shame that Canada has taken the safe supply approach. The safe supply, like how can they defend it?
Yeah, the a safe supply of poison, consumptive poison. But you are right to point out that China is peddling the ingredients of fentanyl and opioids around the world. And we know that the Chinese communists, they see a long game. It's not like an immediate revolution. It's their 100-year plan. So you cause societal destruction and decay. You rewire the brains of young people with TikTok. You surveil young people 20 years in advance of their careers so that you have compromise on them through TikTok because you have access to everything they've ever said and done in all their communications. Let's go back to Trump's tweet there. Justin Trudeau of Canada, I love how he said, in case you didn't know, called me to ask what could be done about tariffs. I told him that many people have died from fentanyl that came through the borders of Canada and Mexico, and nothing has convinced me that it has stopped. He said that it's gotten better, but I said that's not good enough. The call ended in a somewhat friendly manner. He was unable to tell me when the Canadian election is taking place, which made me curious, like what's going on here. Then I realized he's trying to use this issue to stay in power. Good luck, Justin. Exactly. And I mean, if it's not Justin Trudeau in power, it's one of his cronies.
And there it is.
And Trump's on to him. Why aren't Canadians? I don't know.
That's right. Trump has got his number. I hope Trump keeps putting the pressure on him because it's only because of Trump that he resigned in the first place. It's only because of Trump that we're securing our borders. It's only because of Trump that we're tackling fentanyl at all. Started to talk about it, even though 50,000 Canadians are dead in the grave because of it. But I sure hope that he keeps putting the heat on. I mean, nobody deserves it more than Justin Trudeau.
Yeah. And I hope he turns his ire to Mark Carney, and I'm sure he will in the few short days it will take before we find out who our next prime minister is, our completely unelected prime minister, thanks to a quirk of the Westminster parliamentary system. And we'll get to Jagmeet Singh's comments on that in a second. Danielle Smith reacting to the U.S. imposing tariffs on Canada, taking a more conciliatory approach and headed to the courts where I think this should be battled out. And Danielle Smith, to her credit, has some pretty serious success in the courts against adversaries of the Alberta oil and gas sector. So let's listen to that.
What is your reaction from what you just heard from Trudeau? So disappointing. We've been doing everything we can, not only our federal government, but all of the subnational governments to try to avoid this outcome. We, as you heard, we've been working on the border, and we've been putting up drones, putting up helicopters, putting up more personnel. We've been very successful in stopping people from coming across the border from the United States. We've been stopping drugs from coming across the border from the United States. We've brought those numbers down. We thought that that was what the U.S. president wanted. And to see this escalation is so disappointing, so damaging, initially to American consumers and American businesses who buy Canadian goods and raw materials. But then now with the counter tariffs, it's also going to be harmful to Canadian consumers. No one wins a tariff war. And so we want to go back to looking at the agreement that we signed, the USMCA. That has served us well for a number of years. And I don't know why the president is behaving this way, because it's illegal. We're going to challenge it. And we would like to get back to negotiating some of the pressure points on that.
Okay, fair enough. You know who she didn't bash in all of that? Was she said she didn't understand why Trump is doing this. I think she does. But she didn't run her mouth about him. And I think a lot of this has to do with Alberta being collateral damage with our 10% tariff on oil and gas for Donald Trump's visceral dislike of the Liberals who can't shut their mouths about Trump. They call him names. They run him down. They're campaigning against him. Alberta and the West, we're collateral damage in all of this because, as Danielle Smith points out, we were doing what we could.
Well, and she said, I don't know why they're behaving like this. And I'm like, well, because of Doug Ford running his fat mouth. That is why they're behaving like this. That's exactly why they're behaving like this. Had that guy just put a sock in it just for a quick second. Scott Moe did an excellent job. Did you see Scott Moe's statement out of Saskatchewan?
We're going to talk about it in a second.
I mean,
actually, let's talk about it right now.
Oh, good.
Oh, let's read it.
Let's do it. Yeah. Can you read that, Sheila? I don't have my glasses.
Neither do I, but I'll bring it up on my other screen, which is like inches from my face, because I'm an old lady, but I'm a vain old lady. I don't like to wear my glasses. Okay, so it says President Trump is just simply wrong when he says Canada has nothing the U.S. needs, and Americans are about to find out he's wrong. American farmers need Canadian fuel and fertilizer to grow their crops. Trump's tariffs will drive up the cost of oil, potash, and uranium. That's right. And will drive up the cost of groceries for every American family. That's just one example. Prices will go up for U.S. families immediately, and jobs will be lost as a result of the Trump tariffs. This is a completely self-inflicted and unnecessary action by the American government. Canada's response needs to be economically sound and reasoned. It should not result in the same kind of self-inflicted harm that Trump is imposing on his citizens. So he's anti-retaliatory tariffs, because retaliatory tariffs hurt everybody, including Canadians, which is exactly, I think, where you need to be. To that end, our government is carefully considering Saskatchewan's response. Cabinet will meet tomorrow and consider all options. As we have always done, our government will continue working to expand trade to other countries and expand trade within Canada by reducing interprovincial trade barriers and promoting the construction of necessary infrastructure like pipelines. Further measures in response to the U.S. tariffs will be announced in the days ahead. Did not attack Trump personally, which is something the Liberals are genitally unable to do.
Well, excuse me, sorry. He did call them Trump tariffs, and he did start it off by saying President Trump. And if we could just dial that back, boys, okay, if we could just dial that back, these are American tariffs from the American government. And if you could quit antagonizing the big guy from across the border, that would be great. But for the most part, I so appreciated the temperament and tone of this announcement, really pointing out to Americans that we do enjoy a really great sort of copacetic relationship with each other, that our goods coming from Canada, especially potash, especially uranium from Saskatchewan, and our oil and gas, will cause prices to go up in the United States. That is great messaging. If we could just back away from the antagonistic anti-Trump stance, that would have been a pitch perfect announcement. Scott Moe, well done.
Yes. Now, on the flip side, Naheed Nenshi The NDP leader replacement for Rachel Notley, absolutely terrible mayor of Calgary who doesn't have a seat in the legislature. He has a ex-screed. For some reason, he just posted this picture of himself looking very confused and possibly mid-stroke, instead of just speaking to the camera. So I'll read it, because he made it real darn inconvenient. Like, just use video, like, why write this big long thread of you just, like, with your eye sort of closing and collapsing like I do when I have to read these things. So he says, this is the NDP's response. And remember, he doesn't even have a seat in the legislature. For decades, the U.S. has been our steadfast ally and single most important trading partner. Today, the president's actions have damaged the special relationship that our countries hold. This trade war will hurt us all. Since the president first announced the threat of tariffs, the premier has consistently taken the wrong approach. She has failed Alberta again. I'm going to stop right here because his former leader, Rachel Notley, she's on the Canada-U.S. trade
Yes.
panel of anti-American cranks, by and large. Her leadership on this file was absolutely ineffective because thanks to them, Canada got 25% tariffs. And thanks to Danielle Smith, the oil and gas sector only got 10. So that's a success of what her approach was. But anyways, Danielle Smith thought her balls and parties tour of Mar-a-Lago and Washington, D.C. would get Albertans a reprieve from devastating tariffs that will wreak havoc on our jobs, our industries, and our way of life. Are we just pretending like we didn't get 10% tariffs and everybody else got 25? She failed and threw other Canadians under the bus while failing. No, everybody else could have done what she did, but they didn't, Doug Ford. Danielle Smith ignored the threats for our sovereignty. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if every single Canadian premier would have behaved like Danielle Smith did right off the hop, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Right.
Naheed. Okay, continue, Sheila. Do continue. Tell me what he said.
Anyways, yeah, we should be asking him what he thinks of Rachel Notley's approach to negotiations by just being anti-Trump and anyways, let's just go. She ignored the threats to our sovereignty and generally thought that laughing at President Trump's insults while schmoozing and taking selfies with Republican officials would help us. It didn't. Again, 10% tariffs versus 25. The premier's
it helps 15%, Naheed.
Yeah. Her strategy is wrong and her justifications are wrong. Taking Trump's side, she didn't. She took Alberta's side instead of all of Canada. The past few months, and abandoning the rest of Canada has led to the greatest threat our economy and way of life has ever seen. He's blaming Danielle Smith for the failings of the Liberals. The premier has no plan whatsoever to deal with it, as we saw in her no plan budget. And even now, other than that one appearance on American TV, she's hiding, desperately trying to craft a plan. She did a press conference yesterday. She's doing, I think, 2 today. She's in Medicine Hat today talking about the border, but okay, Naheed. Even now, other than an appearance on him, she's hiding, desperately trying to craft a plan that should have been in the works since Trump told her to pound sand. He did not tell her to pound sand. He likes her. What we need is a multifaceted response along with the rest of the country. Internal markets, helping Albertans buy Canadian, and reducing interprovincial barriers, including building codes and professional licensing. Notice what he didn't mention? Pipelines.
Right.
Pipelines.
Yeah, he forgot about that.
Secondly, we must work with all of Canada on using the best tools we have to retaliate without showing all of our cards first. Then why are they litigating this in the media every day?
Why are they showing their cards? Why is the entire country a premier showing their cards first? That was a good observation, Naheed. Good one. Yeah.
Okay. Then now he mentions pipelines. Third, we must use the opportunity to diversify our global markets and build the infrastructure, including pipelines, that we need to access new markets. Is that why the NDP let Keystone XL and Northern Gateway die on the vine? Didn't advocate for Energy East whatsoever? When Rachel Notley took power, she called home Rob Merrifield. Rob Merrifield, former Conservative MP under Harper, he was basically Alberta's envoy in Washington to advance our interests. She called him home and said, we don't need you there. So not only did they just allow these things to wither and die, they actually actively sabotaged any efforts to diversify our markets. In 6 years, the UCP has been in power. They have once again failed to build a single mile of pipeline to Tidewater. We're just pretending that Trans Mountain didn't get built. Way over budget and overdue, but it exists. But anyways, real rich from the people who let Northern Gateway die. We must ensure the Trans Mountain expansion is working at full capacity to ship to global markets and fast track new proposals. These are the guys who added like the DEI baloney into any sort of approvals and contaminated our infrastructure and energy grid with green garbage. Here it comes. We need a plan to help these workers who will be hurt by the tariffs, including income support and retraining. Congratulations, manufacturing people. You get to be nipple greasers in the vast windmill farms of tomorrow. Good luck to you. We've heard nothing from this government about their plans to deal with this beyond their admitting that unemployment will massively increase in their budget. Anyways, unlike Daniel Smith, Alberta's New Democrats will always stand for Alberta and Canada. That's what an ethical and competent government does. They are the makers, quite frankly, of the problem right now. And by the way, the Liberals in Ottawa are propped up by the NDP, who have dragged the Liberals even further to the left. Isn't it fascinating how his criticism is for Daniel Smith, who's done everything she can to advance Alberta's interests around the world, despite the roadblocks thrown up by the NDP and the Liberals? Why isn't he calling for an election?
Well, this is, and I'm so happy that we read the whole thing, because what I'm seeing out of Naheed Nenshi and Wab Canoe in Manitoba and Carla Beck in Saskatchewan, and so many of these NDP wannabe leaders, is that they are adopting policies, pro-oil and gas policies, to advance their own reputations in their provinces, because they all know at their very, very heart that oil and gas is the key economic driver in their provinces, right? But what we must not do is forget what Rachel Notley did to Alberta the second she got in. They are lying about their support of natural oil and gas and natural gas to bolster their reputations until they get in, and until we have wind farms and solar farms as far as the eye can see. And what is so interesting about those wind and solar farms, Sheila, what is so interesting is they are funded by American backers who are intricately linked to the Democratic Party of the United States of America. In Saskatchewan, there was one announced, I want to say late last year, just outside of Weyburn, Saskatchewan.
In prime farmland. Prime farmland.
The amount of crazy prime farmland that has been sold to Saskatchewan's power utility for solar panels that they then partner with the First Nation on, but that then is financially backed by Democratic linked companies in the United States. It is crazy. It is just one humongous grift. Don't believe them, Canada. Okay, when how do you know an NDP is lying? It's when their lips are moving. Do not fall for it, Canada. Do not. Be smart. I mean,
Rachel Notley campaigned on being I'm the pro oil and gas pragmatic NDP in Alberta, and then all she did was attack oil and gas, and not only that, pollute the upper echelons of the bureaucracy and the political appointments in this province with radicals. Anti-oil radicals, any people who made previous careers blocking pipelines. She appointed them to the energy ministry as assistant deputy ministers and chiefs of staff.
This is Carla Beck right now in Saskatchewan, driving a pickup truck, being bohunk. Oh, I'm rural Saskatchewan's girl. I mean, do not believe them, you guys. This is their playbook. And we must be able to see through it. They will say what they think we need to be able to hear to be elected, and then they'll decimate us. They will absolutely decimate us. Don't fall for it, Canada. Do not.
Absolutely not. What do we got here? We got a no, this is a Rumble rant. Roly Poly only gives us $5. Trudy, idiot. Now he's pulling a Zelensky, and we see how that ended. Thanks, Rebels. Yeah, it's I mean,
that he won't resign. He won't resign and he's blocking elections. Yeah. No, exactly that.
Let's get in.
Trulinsky, that's what we'll call him.
Trulinsky.
Yeah.
Let's get into Wob Canoe. He's got a video here. This is, I mean, and he's emulating Trump, but anyway, let's watch this. What a joke. Look at these people behind him. Let's play it.
Okay, this order, it's a wonderful order. It's a beautiful order. This order is pulling American booze off the liquor mart shelves.
Okay, well, first of all, if he's trying to sink the American economy, starting with Manitoba's booze consumption is one way. But you know what else I noticed about that video, Sheila? You know what else I noticed is on that order that he signed, Trump style. Like, I wonder who he's trying to emulate here. But on that order, they had to actually put one of those little sign here post-it flags to show him where the bottom. It's on my Twitter. I blew it up so you can see it, but they did. They literally had to put a little sign that says sign, like a little flag that says sign here, Wob, because he couldn't find the bottom of the page without them. I mean, it was this is the NDP for you right here. This is the NDP for you.
You know what? There's
Here
here's
it
my
is.
thing with, oh my goodness. He couldn't pull it off. Like, nobody could have been like, Wob, get that off there.
Wob, sign your name right under where it says your name. And somebody came along and we're like, he can't be trusted to do that. We absolutely must put a little flag there for him.
Like, see where it says Wob, which is 3 letters, just sign there.
Nope. Can't be trusted. Can't be trusted. Gotta make it bulletproof for that kid.
I'm completely sick of the liquor virtue signaling, by the way. Doug Ford pulling booze off the shelf that Ontarians have already paid for, and he's just going to put it in storage and then bring it out when the tariffs are over. What does that prove?
Yes. No, it's not like they're going to return them to the States and get their money back. It's stupid. I've already made plans to go see my friends in Estevan, and they're buying bourbon, and we're going to buy like cool ultra lights and Pabst Blue Ribbon, and we're going to make a whole American party out of it. So you should come, Sheila.
I should come.
It will be a good time.
And we saw this with now Wob Canoe doing the same thing. But there's this like trend of the left to use liquor for some reason, because they think that's like what regular people do, is we just sit around and wonder what we're going to drink today. They've done this with like the product of Israel labeling on Israeli wines, like if it was made in an Israeli settlement, which the UN declared illegal, as though in neighborhoods of Jews could be made illegal. Like, where else do you people think Jews shouldn't live? That seems slightly racist, but wines that were made in settlements, the federal court has said like they are not supposed to be labeled as product of Israel. Well, where else? What else would they be labeled with? And then, of course, let us not forget how the left used Bud Light to prop up Dylan Mulvaney.
I still won't drink it. And that was my go-to beer for 25 years.
Same.
At every bar, at every cabaret, at every event, it was my go-to. And I have not touched it, not with a 10-foot pole. And as a matter of fact, when we're ordering in restaurants, we're just like anything but Bud Light. Thank you very much.
Yes.
No Bud products. Thank you. No Anheuser-Busch for us. Thank you very much. No, they betrayed us, and we will not. They would literally have to give me $10,000 to drink Bud Light again.
Okay, let's go to David Eby, NDPer. He says, we didn't ask for this fight. I'm pretty sure you did, Mr. Let's give away drugs on the street and crack pipe vending machines. Premier crack pipe vending machines says we didn't ask for this fight. Okay, but we're not going to shrink from it. This is a threat to our sovereignty. It's brought a sense of pride and solidarity amongst Canadians together. We're going to fight and we're going to win. And then he's got a video, some sage advice. As the United States provokes a trade war with Canada, we will not back down. We will fight like hell. I wish he fought the opioid crisis the way he's fighting his biggest trading partners. Anyway.
Here's Ichabod Crane. There he is. Is he going to say it?
There was a moment this morning I ran into, at breakfast, I ran into a woman, and she pulled me aside, and a little bit older. And she said, my dad was a World War II vet. And she said, if he was here, he would tell you, don't let the bastards grind you down. You're big enough to stand on your own 2 feet. Now go and fight like hell. And I think that's a great message for all of us here in Canada. We're big enough to stand on our own 2 feet. This is a moment for us to take an attack and turn it into a source of strength for ourselves as a province and as a country. There is nowhere else in the world I would rather be than in Canada and in British Columbia to face this tariff threat.
He's got the charisma of Mark Carney, doesn't he?
He really, really does. David Eby, this is David Eby's Pearl Harbor moment. Like really, that's what he thinks is happening here. But again, the conjuring the World War II language, the positioning as a war hero. David Eby, you just announced retaliatory tariffs on red states only. There's only just like a country mile wide difference between what you're doing and World War II vets did. Like, please, sir, take your rickety frame and sit down for a quick sec. Thanks so much. Just ridiculous.
But like, I don't know how they elected him. He has zero charisma. And his economic policies and his track record are terrible. What's wrong with you, Vancouver? What is wrong with you? I feel like they're a little bit more colorful than what I looked at there, albeit misguided. But yes, could we stop with the World War II comparisons, s'il vous plaît? It harkens back to the COVID era, where people really thought that they were saving lives by following the lines on the grocery store. And it played into a certain kind of psyche, the kind of person who actually doesn't do much for their community, doesn't actually help people at all. But now, because they were following stupid rules, meaningless rules, they were able to claim that they were like akin to firefighters rushing into a burning building. Right? Like that's what the self-appointed virtue they gave themselves by doing literally nothing.
Oh no, this is the new, it's only going to take 2 weeks to flatten the tariffs. This is modern day version of that. And the same virtue signalers, the same ones that would scream in your face for not wearing a mask, that would call the police on you for having your family over at Christmas. These are the same people that are saying, we must stand our ground. We must teach them a lesson. We will never cede an inch to those evil Americans. It is the same brainwashed flock of sheep that we saw back in COVID. Same across
completely.
The board.
We've got Freeland making the World War II comparison, and you'd think a woman with her family history would sort of steer clear of any opportunity to invoke that, given that her granddad was on the wrong side. And when that was publicly revealed,
disclosed,
then she basically said, no, the Russians, that's Russian disinformation. Apparently the Russians traveled back in time and put facts about her family's history and her grandfather's history as a Russian propagandist into the provincial archives of Alberta. There is nothing these Russians can't do. But anyway, she says that Canada is facing economic warfare and the worst crisis since World War II. I'll tell you why this is chilling, besides the stupidity.
And convene a meeting of Canadian business leaders and union leaders. And I will say to them, we are facing economic warfare. We are facing what is the gravest threat to our country since the Second World War.
Okay, so why that is frightening for her to say is that Parliament remained prorogued during World War II, but we were facing an actual war and not a crisis of their own making, because these people can't do what it takes to keep Canadians safe. like I wonder who made the crisis. And as Rebel News X accounts tweets, who led us here, and why should we trust the same people who created this mess to fix it? Yeah, the Liberals are experiencing the old Kamala Harris problem. How do you first say there's a crisis without noting your own responsibility in the crisis? And then if you created the crisis, how do people trust you to fix it? I think the Liberals find themselves in that mess.
Yeah, no, when I listen to her talk, or any Liberal for that matter, you have to consider what they are projecting and what they are foreshadowing. Because in every one of their little, their little pressers, they're going to go off script just a tiny little bit and give you a sneak peek into where they're at and what they're up to. And by her, conjuring these ideas surrounding war, should concern every single Canadian, especially if you are a person of military age or you have children of military age. Chrystia Freeland has warmongering on her mind, and she's telling us every single day.
Do we have and the reason I think that if Freeland were elected, she would prorogue Parliament, and if Carney's elected, he would also likewise prorogue Parliament, because I think it's a sort of a given that he's going to be elected, and that's why Freeland isn't actually on the attack against him. She doesn't seem to be campaigning against Carney, because I think she's going to be deputy prime minister in a Carney government. She's already hinting at what will be done once Carney wins the election. And then I'll tell you why I think the deal is already done with Jagmeet Singh to do that. So do we have that clip of Freeland saying she actually probably wouldn't call it the election right away if she were elected? Sorry to put you on the spot. Okay, she's going to find it.
Okay. I have not seen that clip. I have not.
Well, we should watch it together, because this is more of the same from Karina Gould, who said, we're in an emergency, so we shouldn't have an election. And it's like, well, we're in an emergency. Shouldn't you guys be back at work then? Like, if this is wartime stuff, like,
if we were in an emergency, wouldn't you pause your leadership race? Wouldn't you do that? Like, if we were in an actual emergency, wouldn't you actually want to do that, guys? We're not. This is another manufactured emergency, just like the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa in 2022, that they are going to use to their benefit. And I mean, I wish more than anything the Conservatives would come up with a plan that would stop them. Whether it be a referendum, whether it be a court challenge, I don't care. But man, to not have anything from the other side to make this madness stop from the Liberals and NDP, pretty disappointing.
Did we find that, Olivia, or not? Oh, here it is. Yeah. Freeland admits she has no intention to call an election if she becomes the prime minister. Let's watch this.
I intend to win on Sunday, and when I win, I will invite Mark to serve as finance minister in my government. I think we'll make a great team. I think right now we need a prime minister who has a seat in the House of Commons, who can lead a government that has the political legitimacy to fight this tariff war, and someone who has experience as a political decision maker in a crisis, someone who has the experience and the plan and the guts to stand up for Canada in this critical moment. That is, I am the leader who is uniquely qualified to fight for us right now. When I stepped from the government on December 16th, in my resignation letter, I explained that the threat from Donald Trump was existential, that we needed to focus all of our attention on that threat, that we could not afford to spend money on anything else. I have sadly been proven right. And I also committed to my constituents, to all Liberals and to all Canadians, that come what may, I'll run in the next election. Thank you.
I didn't get where she said, so maybe that's not in. I mean, that's just somebody's interpretation of what she was leaning to there. But for her to say we need somebody with the political legitimacy to fight these tariffs, give us an election so we can decide who's politically legitimate.
That's right. That's exactly right. If there's one party with no legitimacy left in Canada, it is the Liberal Party of Canada. It is them. But the reason is that, I've missed in this leadership run for the Liberal leadership that anybody has anything negative to say about the other candidates, right? And then so I started thinking, well, why? Like, oh, okay, so why would you not be attacking their poor track records? Why would you not be? And then I realized, oh, it's a ranked ballot system. So
Right.
you can't risk offending or annoying or pissing anybody else, any of the other candidates off, for fear they place fourth or third and give somebody else the votes. So this is an extraordinarily polite leadership race where nobody is answering real questions that aren't pre-vetted from supporters, and that's why we're not seeing any real debate when it came to their leadership debates. It was all just an agreement fest. Like it's
It,
really quite sad that we
it
don't
was
know how they genuinely feel about each other.
Well, because I think they all like each other. They're just all angling to be in Mark Carney's cabinet, and it was definitely the like yes and or I agree and that was the entire debate. And I was like, when does the debate part come to this thing?
Exactly
2 hours into my life later. I've got a quick ad read because we need to pay the bills, and then we're going to go into what Jagmeet Singh said, and then we have to talk about Mark Carney and his attacks on the free press. They continue on. Happened last night in Calgary. But that didn't stop our little Angelica from doing her job. So, do you enjoy the free speech that Rumble is protecting and fighting for? Our show on Rumble is only possible thanks to our viewers supporting Rumble's platform by purchasing Rumble's products. Most of you drink coffee every day. That's especially if you've got to listen to David Eby and Mark Carney. That's why you have to try Rumble 1775 coffee. It's actually some of the best coffee, and it's the same price as the coffee you buy now, but it is way better. Rumble 1775 coffee is free from chemicals, rich in flavor. This is because their beans are sourced from high-altitude farms in Bolivia, handpicked, roasted weekly at their facility in Miami, and delivered fresh to your doorstep. And as believers in freedom, buying from Rumble helps fight back against woke corporations like Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. Join the coffee revolution and the brew rebellion with Rumble 1775 coffee. Go to 1775coffee.com, use code STUDIO, get a free month supply of their cognitive boosting supplement, Limitless. I'd love to send that to a few people. When you buy 2 bags of their coffee, think about that. It's a crazy deal. And the supplement is worth more than the 2 bags of coffee. Go to 1775coffee.com. Try their amazing coffee. We've got a quick couple of chats here. Abuben gives us $10, says, does anyone else see a resemblance of the Premier of BC and Mr. Bean? Yeah, completely.
David E. is what we're going to call him from now.
David E. Bean. David E. Bean, exactly. Except Mr. Bean has some sort of charisma and personality, makes you want to watch him. David E. just Carney levels of excitement rolling off him.
Yes. 0%
David
charisma,
E.
low testosterone. Can we all agree?
Low-
David E. is a low testosterone man. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I believe it is the left-wing diet. Sevenfold 777 gives us $5. Says, thank you, Rebel News. Well, boy, you are welcome. Let's go to Jagmeet Singh. I think the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, who's basically done this to us by leaving the Liberals in charge for so long. He's got things to say. He calls for an emergency. Oh, the gall. Okay, let's watch this, and then we'll tell you why. The audacity of this guy. Watch.
And finally, I know while the Parliament doesn't need to be recalled to put in place the retaliatory tariffs, I believe we should send a united message as all leaders and all parties that we stand united together, opposed to these tariffs, and we're going to impose these retaliatory tariffs with a unified voice, denouncing Donald Trump's attack on our country. This is a time that calls for us to step up, to be united, and to fight back. And so I'm calling for an emergency session of Parliament to do exactly that. And finally, I know while the Parliament doesn't need to be recalled.
That's good. I wonder if he could find the guy who voted to keep this government in power. It's not as though there weren't multiple chances for him to vote to bring the government down in the last session so that we could have a government with a mandate that's actually at work doing these things, but he kept propping up the guy who prorogued us.
But Sheila, that would mean that he wouldn't get his hands on his multi-million-dollar pension. Like, how could we possibly expect Jagmeet to let go of his multi-million-dollar pension? I mean, that is just asking a little bit too much. But I hope our friends over in the editing room one day put together a supercut of my eye rolls when I'm forced to listen to Jagmeet sing, because I just can't. I can't even help myself. But this is a guy who is so self-serving and would do nothing to help Canadians when it really mattered, want to get up on his soapbox and scream that he's Captain Canada now to respond to America's tariffs. I mean, get bent, Jagmeet. Get all the way bent.
Yeah, he's the reason we're in this mess at the end of the day. He had the linchpin he could pull out on this government. We would have already had an election. We would have had a government with a mandate to deal with this stuff. We would have had a government that doesn't have a poisoned relationship with Donald Trump. But instead, Jagmeet needed his pension. And here we are with 25% tariffs and no end in sight. It's astounding. I hope he finds the NDP leader and asks him why he did this to us.
Yeah.
Idiot.
Yes.
Let's what do we got next? Oh, do we have to do a Rebel ad break, or can we just go into Mark Carney being horrible? Okay, let's do Carney. Olivia says let's do Carney. So last night Carney had a campaign event in Calgary. For those of you who have been following along, and if you're watching, I think you have been, Mark Carney's campaign launch was catastrophic and boring. It was exciting and boring all at once in Edmonton. So boring if you had to listen to Mark Carney talk, but exciting and tyrannical in that he kicked out and called the police on independent journalists from True North, Western Standard, and Countersignal. In fact, they frog marched Cian Bexty out. That guy should be getting used to that, frankly. So Mark Carney did that, used the police to get rid of independent journalists, which stands in stark contrast to what he said to the Rebel News team of journalists in Davos just a year ago when he was Davos man and not Captain Canada running to lead the Liberal Party. He said at the time that it was wrong for Freeland's security detail to block David Menzies and rough David Menzies up. And he said public figures should be answering tough questions from journalists. That is what they're supposed to do. Fast forward a year later, Mark Carney, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, following in lockstep with Justin Trudeau. Now, last night in Calgary, there was a Mark Carney event. And so independent journalists deployed to the venue, many of whom were invited by the campaign, till the campaign figured out that they are not government subsidized, bought and paid for Liberal Party journalists, and then had them removed. So we've got some comments from Derek Fildbrand. He's the boss man at the Western Standard, former MLA in Alberta. He said, tonight, Mark Carney refused to allow Western Standard reporters into his campaign event in Calgary again. Last time he outright lied afterward and said he allowed all local media in. I think Jen Hodgson from the Western Standard, she's the nicest reporter you'll ever meet in your life. She works for the Western Standard. She covers events, painfully well behaved. And they said, I'm sorry, you're not on the list. Well, so add her to the list, right? They also ejected Wyatt Claypool. He's an independent journalist. And they ejected little Angelica Toy, who is a part-time journalist with us. She works behind the scenes, and she's all of like 90 pounds and 4'11", just a tiny, diminutive woman, not threatening at all and always extra well behaved. They booted her too. But here's the thing with Angelica and all rebel journalists, you can give them the boot, but they're still going to do their job. So Angelica found where Mark Carney was going to come out, and she did some journalism from the outside. By the way, Mark Carney, for Mr. Environmentalist pro-carbon tax, the guy loves his idling SUVs parked behind the building. So that's how Angelica knew where he was going to come out. You know, like not real conspicuous, my guy.
Gee, I wonder whose motorcade this is.
Right.
I wonder whose diesel burning 8-car bulletproof motorcade this is.
Right. He's
Yes,
rolling like
that.
he's the prime minister already. So Angelica
Sick.
ran around and got her question into Mark Carney. Now, he didn't answer because he doesn't answer tough questions. He only answers easy questions from the mainstream media, which is why they don't want independent journalists in. But let's watch Angelica refusing to be told that she can't do her job.
Mark Carney, why did you lie about moving the head office of Brookfield? Are you friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, or is she just an acquaintance?
Why are you using police resources to help yourself get elected, Mark?
Asked about Ghislaine.
She went there. Oh, Angelica, you absolute beaut. Yes, you did so. Yes, you did ask about Ghislaine Maxwell. Well, that's a burning question. That's a burning question that every Canadian deserves the answer to before this guy becomes a prime minister. But really, what is so chilling about all of this is this guy may be installed as the leader of our nation without ever answering a pre-vetted question from a friendly / corrupt mainstream media member. Not one. It is staggering. It is truly staggering that this is our reality in Canada.
Yeah, I think those are two questions that anybody who's working for the taxpayer-funded media should be asking. You have the resources and the access to ask these questions to Mark Carney. These are things Canadians want to know. What is his tangential association with a convicted sex trafficker?
Yes.
If there is none, then answer that question. Just say no. Just we happen to be in the same place at the same time. Okay, then say that. But avoiding the question makes people even more suspicious. And then, of course, the lying about Brookfield, moving the head office of Brookfield after Trump got elected, because these people all knew what was coming and he had to protect his shareholders while not protecting Canadians. Mark Carney has moved more jobs to the United States than Danielle Smith ever has, I'll tell you that much. But nobody in the mainstream media will ask these questions, even though they're standing feet from Mark Carney.
Well, it just goes to show you that anybody that belongs to the mainstream media that is being funded by the federal government absolutely cannot be trusted. They are complicit in the destruction of Canada over the last 9 years, and partially, if not wholly, responsible for the mess that we are in Canada right now. Truly, the mainstream media in Canada is your enemy, Canadians, and don't you ever forget it. They sold you out. They sold you out for their pitiful paychecks and for access to these bastards, and they should not be forgiven. They should not be forgiven.
I love the phrase that Chris Sims always uses, and Chris Sims, we know and love her. She's with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. But she's also been a journalist, and she's the one who has that incredible, powerful viral clip of testifying at the parliamentary hearings. And she says, media should not ever be funded by the government, because even if you aren't politically contaminated, there's the perception of political contamination. And don't you care about your credibility anymore? Because as a journalist, if you don't have credibility, you don't have the trust of your readers or your viewers, and then you have nothing. But she uses the phrase frequently, comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable.
The comfortable. That's right. And that's what the function of the media should be in Canada. But because it's been so terribly compromised by our feckless and irresponsible and truly dangerous prime minister, that is not the media environment that we have.
Yeah. Now, Mark Carney's people didn't kick everybody out because some of them just went in as normals, because that's what you have to do now as a journalist dealing with Mark Carney. Is you just can't go in as members of the media. You just go in and you're a member of the public, and hopefully they don't recognize your name so that they can't weed you out. So Andy Lee, independent journalist Andy Lee, got in, and let's show that clip. Mark Carney says America wants to destroy our way of life. I believe America is responsible in no small part for our very comfortable and safe, relatively speaking, way of life.
Yes.
But anyway, let's listen to Mark Carney. I wonder if this anti-American nonsense is going to help us in those negotiations.
And it will work.
Funeral director.
My opponent, Pierre Poilievre. My opponent. He doesn't get any of this. Because, and I've seen this movie before around the world, he's that type of lifelong politician who worships at the altar of the free market. Despite
I hope so. Never
actually having earned a paycheck or having to make a payroll. His reflex is to cut and destroy. President Trump's plan is to divide and conquer. Pierre Poilievre's plan is to divide and be conquered. We know that division won't win a trade war. Division won't pay the rent or the mortgage. Division won't bring down the price of groceries. Division won't make Canada strong. It's our strength that the Americans want. They want our resources. They want our water. They want our land. They want our country. Think about that for a moment. They would destroy our way of life. Canada is a mosaic. America is a melting pot. Aux États-Unis, on a reconnaît.
That's good enough. Of course, we have to be like, oh, this is just more of Justin Trudeau's like, the greatest thing about Canadians is that we're not Americans.
That's the iteration. That's Mark Carney's iteration of that. But I'll tell Mark Carney one thing. I'd rather a career politician over a puppet master for the WEF, or a puppet master for George Soros, or for Brookfield, or for Klaus Schwab, or for Ghislaine Maxwell. I would take a career politician over any of those things, Mark Carney. To say that this guy is inherently dangerous because he is so insanely well connected to the evildoers of the world is not an exaggeration. I mean, his network is what makes him so dangerous to Canada. And yet, look at all of those people just lapping it up, just lapping it up.
I think somebody is telling them to applaud, because like even him standing at the podium there, the lectern, it's like, dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to mourn the loss of, I don't know, the economy, Mark.
Once great nation, a once great and peaceful and prosperous nation. Yes, exactly that.
But it's funny how he talks about career politicians ever having to make a payroll, because he might be describing Justin Trudeau. And so if somebody who is a career politician who's never worked in the private sector is unfit to hold the office of prime minister, then your old boss, the guy you propped up for so long, then neither is he. And Freeland, when she had to work in the private sector at Reuters, she destroyed the entire department of Reuters that she worked for. It was called Reuters Next. Yes. Good luck finding it these days. It doesn't exist, thanks to them putting Chrystia Freeland in charge. So, and Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney saw fit to put her in charge of the entire Canadian economy. And she basically says, I mean, when she says, I hope to make him the finance minister in my government, that's her saying, I hope he makes me the finance minister in his government, and he probably will.
The reason why she was made finance minister is because she was the official biographer of George Soros. Like
Right.
this is known information. Like this is common knowledge. She wasn't qualified to be finance minister. She has no, economic uh, acumen that would qualify her for that role. The reason she was made a finance minister is because of her relationship to George Soros and to the World Economic Forum and to these ultra elites that we are all now recognizing have ruined our way of life in Canada, have ruined our chance at prosperity for the next 15 or 20 years if the Americans don't intervene on our behalf. And look, she's within spitting distance of being there again, Sheila. It is an outrage.
Let's quickly pivot back to this tariff stuff. The U.S. Commerce Secretary and Doug Ford, so that's Howard Lutnick, and Doug Ford had a very prickly conversation yesterday, what Howard Lutnick described as a tough and aggressive conversation after Doug Ford said that he would slap a 25% export tariff on electricity, hurting the poorest people first. And it sounds like there was a movement yesterday on Trump to say, like, well, maybe the tariffs will come off relatively soon. But Doug Ford was like, no, I'm going to make sure that these things stay on forever, and has a bit of an ugly conversation with Howard Lutnick, who, for all intents and purposes, from what I understand, has a pretty decent relationship with Danielle Smith. But it's like Doug Ford just wants to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory over and over and over again.
How much you want to bet they called Doug Ford right before lunch and they got hangry, Doug?
Oh, hangry
They
Doug.
got hangry. You really how much you want to bet that's the actual truth? Like, they caught him in a moment where he was right before they interrupted his 40 chicken McNugget lunch and started talking to him about tariffs. And all Doug wanted to do was dive into his fast food fest.
His nuggies.
No, Doug Ford, that's really his bag of nuggies. No, but Doug Ford is not helping anybody in Canada. Doug Ford is not helping the people of Ontario. He canceled the entire Starlink contract.
Yeah.
That Ontario had with Elon Musk's Starlink, and that does nothing but hurt the people of the far north of Ontario. That does nothing but hurt them. So Doug is going to pay hundreds of times more for a made in Canada service that provides that doesn't provide the same amount of return on investment that Starlink would, and he's shooting himself in the foot every time he opens his mouth. Like, please, somebody get a hold on him. He's not doing Canadians any favors.
Yeah, I think I saw it's on Ezra's X account. It sounded like the tariffs were set to come off, or at least there was some movement on that. And instead,
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised, but go on.
yeah, and instead, Doug Ford somehow picks a fight with Howard Lutnick right before the State of the Union address, or Trump's address to Congress. And so they're like, actually, you know what? Screw you. It's quite bizarre, actually. I can't even believe that he did it. But like, Doug Ford should not be allowed to take phone calls from Americans at this point. He should be completely kicked right off this file and silenced. There it is.
100%.
Here, Olivia, I'll put it in the Slack channel so you can see. There it is. If you want to bring that up, and then we'll close on Howard Lutnick's video after. So it says, so Laura Stone says, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick called Premier Doug Ford today after his press conference. It looks like Trump was planning to drop the tariffs after just one day, like he did last time. but Doug Ford was doing his best to escalate things.
Christ, shut up, Doug. Shut up, for the love of everything holy in the country of Canada. Just next time your phone rings and it's an American, is it just like
Zip it. Zip it. We've got a video from Howard Lutnick talking about Trudeau. So this should give you a good mindset about what the American administration thinks about Trudeau. We know they don't respect him. All they do is make fun of him.
Yeah,
But this is
remember
our
they're
Commerce
projecting.
Secretary. This is their
Yeah,
Tariff
remember
Secretary.
he's going to be projecting and he's going to be foreshadowing. Listen.
Thinking about that, we'll see what we do tomorrow.
Prime Minister,
they're talking to us.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today said that Donald Trump is trying to cripple the Canadian economy in order to annex it. What do you say to that?
Justin Trudeau is running the end of his term, and I don't really want to think about the ridiculous things he's said in the last couple of days. It's sad. It's time for him to go, and let's move on, have a new government in Canada. Thinking about that?
They are done with
Yeah.
him. They are done.
Yeah. And that's signaling, that's the Tariff Secretary. Everybody should know. They're signaling that we're done dealing with the Liberals. And basically that none of this is going to change until the Liberals are gone.
Oh, I mean, at this point, could you blame America? Could you blame America for toying with the mouse that keeps being an aggravating factor in your life? Like, I can't blame them. But what he said there was really telling. Trudeau is done. I'm tired of him. He's ridiculous. That's exactly what he said. I mean, they are done dealing with Trudeau and the Liberal Party of Canada. Huh, amazing. And then there's Doug Ford. You know, nothing like Doug Ford to come in to fan the flames and make things worse. Way to go, Doug.
Yeah. I mean, and then these people will say, Danielle Smith did a bad job. Excuse me, I only have 10% tariffs over here. So who's doing a bad job?
Exactly right.
All right. I think that's the show. Thanks to everybody who pitched in a little bit to keep the lights on, everybody who shares the link of the show to help us get around the intense internet censorship in Justin Trudeau's ineptocracy called Canada. Thanks, Lise, for tagging along with me for the last 2 days as we digest the ongoing tariff wars here in Canada and who's responsible and how we best get ourselves out of this mess. I think there's only one way, and that's a new government. Thanks to everybody who's working behind the board, including Olivia, who always does such a great job when we put her on the spot. I guess I'll see everybody tomorrow. Lise, thanks so much again, buddy.
Well, it is my pleasure to be here, Sheila, and thanks so much for joining us today, Rebel Fam.
Okay, and as my friend David Menzies always says, stay safe and stay sane.
The president just posted on social media that he had spoken with Prime Minister Trudeau. He says he's not satisfied with what the Prime Minister has said when it comes to fentanyl, but less than 1%, as you know, less than 1% of the fentanyl seized last year was in the northern border. What else does Canada need to do?
Well, the president did just put out a statement on his call with the governor, Justin Trudeau, as he calls him, of Canada. And he said that he was not pleased, as you said. He said it's not good enough. He told Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that directly. The call ended in a somewhat friendly manner, as the president said, but he's not going to stop standing up for the American people. And to answer your question directly, when it comes to fentanyl, for the last 4 years, unfortunately, our neighbors to the north and the south, Canada and Mexico, respectively, have allowed America to be a dumping ground, not just for illegal aliens, but for illegal, poisonous, deadly fentanyl, which is now the #1 killer of young people in this country aged 18 to 34. Through the northern border in Canada, in last fiscal year alone, there was enough fentanyl seized to kill 4.8 billion people. And that number is up 2,050% from 2023, the year before. So there's been more than a 2,000% increase in illegal fentanyl seizure at the northern border. Why? Because Canada is allowing that fentanyl to come to the United States. The president sees these numbers. He thinks about the lives that are lost. And everybody in this room, I'm sure, everybody watching at home, everybody across the country knows someone in our lives who has been killed at the hands of this deadly poison. There needs to be repercussions for that. The president feels very strongly about it.
Caroline, respectfully,